went from private equity to the front lines of the health revolution after seeing what was really on her kids' lunch tray. Jessica Perno is here to spill the tea, or maybe the processed juice, on her wild journey. Jessica, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me on.
Of course. Now, I need you in 30 seconds to tell me what the one thing was that you saw on your child's lunch tray that kind of flipped your whole world upside down.
So I think it was more about what was on everyone else's lunch tray, because I've been packing my daughter's lunch. But what I saw in the lunchroom, so I've been volunteering at my daughter's elementary school for the past 3 or 4 years, just as a, lunch lady. And our cafeteria is run by the moms, which is really special because, first of all, it just keeps the community all together, and moms get to see their kids and see their mom's friends, and it's just a special time all around. But what I saw in our cafeteria is, and we have one of the best cafeterias, I think, probably in the country. So I don't even realize what's going on probably in some of the other neighborhoods, but what was going on in mine was at second grade, they're able to choose whatever it is that they want. So in kindergarten and in first grade, you don't have any choices at all. You get whatever the meal is of the day, and it's balanced and things like that. But once you're in second grade, you have the option to choose. And I'm normally the cashier. So I get to see each of these sweet little faces checking out. And a lot of times I would see kids with just like 2 bags of Doritos and ice cream. And we're not allowed to say anything. We're trained that we're not allowed to, I guess, pass judgment on what these kids are eating. But I know that if my daughter was going through and every single day having that for lunch, first of all, she would probably be really unhealthy, and she wouldn't be able to go sit down and be a good little boy or good little girl and pay attention in class. And that's really what I saw. I saw, mothers who were saying that they needed to put their kids potentially on ADHD medication. And I would say, like, maybe they just need to put down the Skittles or not have the Doritos, or just give them a nutrient-rich lunch, and the problem might go away on its own. And this is someone who took ADHD medication for, 18 years or so myself. And I know what those medications can do. I can't imagine what it does to a child, other than just sit them down and have them being able to concentrate, which is just hard when they're pumped full of, all the things that they shouldn't be eating. And, the other thing that I really noticed was that these kids are going into the elementary school because they're learning math and they're learning science and they're learning history and they're learning all the things. And then the thing that we do, each of us, we eat, 2 or 3 times a day, every single day for the rest of our lives. There was no focus on how do we teach these kids how to eat? Are we teaching them how to eat, or are we just teaching them to stuff their face as soon as possible? Yeah. And just, be done with the lunch so they can now go to recess or something like that.
You mentioned 2 bags of Doritos and an ice cream.
That was really the moment.
I was going to say, what was the first school lunch you saw at your daughter's fancy Dallas school that made you go, oh, heck no?
Yeah, it was 2 bags of Doritos and
that's what the school is serving.
Well, that's what they chose. That's what the individual child, was choosing to have for lunch. And maybe it was because.
Has it always been that way? I mean, do you remember, I know your daughter's young, but I don't remember ever having that choice. So it was like a piece of pizza and like, do you want broccoli or do you want French fries? But it was never this junk food. So do you know when that switch happened?
I'm not too sure when that switch happened, but I know when I grew up and in my school, and just because of, the way my family was, my mom worked 3 jobs. My dad was handicapped, and um, my mom worked 3 jobs as a nurse. And sometimes lunch was the only hot meal that we had
Mm-hmm.
for the day. And you just saw, I think in my mom's generation, where moms really took it up a next level and started working full time and becoming a mom, and really starting with the convenience foods and the boom of the grocery store. And it was quick and it was easy and it fed people. Um, but when I was in my cafeteria, I mean, I looked forward to meatloaf day. And I thought that, and I know a lot of people who I went to school with that also grew up with those, with the same lunch program. And the cafeteria staff cooked, they prepared. And now the cafeterias are much more of a opening of
Hmm.
boxes. I think my school is separate and distinct, and they do a lot more cooking. But I know that when we go on the line to serve, everything's just done and made. And I'm sure there's a lot of prep involved. But I mean, these other
Mm.
schools across the country I've seen, they're literally opening up
Yeah.
boxes and packages, a lot, which is, subsidized by the government.
Yeah, and I want to get into that here soon, but take us back a little bit because you were crushing it in private equity, still are. But what was it exactly that made you want to ditch that life for something totally different? Was this always on your radar to be involved somewhat in politics?
So I wouldn't, well, I mean, look, I went to school and I studied politics. It was the only subject when dealt with a piece of paper and said, "Hey, Jessica, you need to figure out what you want to do for the rest of your life right now when you're a freshman." And politics just always seemed to be, that was the only thing that I really had any interest in. I had an interest in just a government that operated efficiently and fairly and freely for everybody. So I always had that in the back of my mind, as just a natural passion for me. But I took a completely different route. I had student debt, and when I got out of college, I was just kind of looking for I wanted to move to New York City, and what kind of job will give me the most amount of money.
Yeah.
So I went into finance, and I spent about 15 years on Wall Street before moving to Texas and launching my own business. And then with the Make America Healthy Again movement, it just really, I was just, this was not of my own making. It was not of my own choosing. It was the right place at the right time, where I was given a tremendous opportunity to.
Yeah, and tell us what are you exactly doing right now?
So I'm part of the Make America Healthy Again Maha Action Healthy Food Task Force. So this is a grassroots type of movement, and it's comprised of 15 to 20 maybe scientists, doctors, professors, huge influential people, entrepreneurs, all these people that have been fighting this battle of nutrition for decades and have been silenced, have not had,
Mm.
you know, intentionally or unintentionally. And now with Bobby in his office, he's kind of, he's limited to an extent of how much he can do at the federal level, because he's now in the bureaucracy and all the agencies, and you really can't legislate lifestyle changes.
Mm-hmm.
So the Maha Action Group is led by Del Bigtree and Bridget Rasmussen, who were on Bobby's campaign when he was running for
Mm-hmm.
president. And they put together this coalition of just passionate, good
Yeah.
people with
Are y'all working with state legislators? at any capacity? Because I know we had Texas Senator Brian Hughes on our show, who is actively working to get legislation to actually pass for the same thing that you're talking about, banning certain chemicals and food additives in the free or reduced meal lunch programs, which I think is a great step in the right direction. So is that part of the strategy that you guys are doing?
Exactly. So there's only so much that you can do at the federal level and the National School Lunch Program. Things like changing the food pyramid that public schools have to follow, but it is going to come down to the state level to change their rules on what can and cannot be in the program. So,
well, as a mom, since you now have the ability to take action and do this, what would be one of the first like additives or food chemicals or foods in general that you would ban from school lunches?
I would say I would want to get back to whole foods in their most natural kind of form, but taste delicious, and a variety. And I would love to make it an educational experience where, and this might be dreaming too big, but if you look at what happens in, Japan and France and some of these other countries that I think do school lunch a lot better than we do, more time, kids around in a more community setting where they're trying different things. I think that these kids, because the options of the processed foods are there, they choose that because they're delicious and that's what they enjoy. But I think that they're learning to be picky eaters there. I think that, my niece, for example, who I guess, would be classified as a picky eater, she's got no palate for beef and chicken and just regular food that everyone ate recently, up until recently. And now all she kind of gravitates towards is Lunchables.
Oh, yeah. Oh, moms ask me all the time, how do you get your kid to eat like fresh roasted turkey, a vegetable, and a fruit at lunchtime? And I'm like, because if they don't, they come home hungry. And I just don't give them the option. Like, I am the mom. I can control what I actually put in their lunches. And honestly, like, I've compared the prices to go buy a bag of carrots versus a box of chips. It's not more it used to be people thought that you had to do it for financial reasons. You needed to go buy the ultra processed food. It was cheaper. It was less expensive. And now that's just not the case anymore. And I say, well, my kids, if they don't eat it, they don't eat lunch. And it's okay to let my kid go hungry until they get to the point where, you know what, we're going to put the food in our mouth that actually nourishes your body and get them used to that.
And I think that moms, like, just the thought of, oh my God, my kid's going to starve is like debilitating. Like, oh gosh, they can't be hungry. But I mean, hunger is the normal, natural thing that like we need to feel once in a while.
Right. The whole eat 5 meals a day thing has really messed up a lot of people in our country.
And I think with, the new food pyramid, which is being head up by Nina Teichels, who's been in this fight for a really long time. She came out with a new thing maybe last week, a couple days ago, of a food pyramid for people who have metabolic diseases. And apparently snacking is not that good for you. And, totally changing where our current food pyramid is, what our current food pyramid is, and it being more focused on proteins, healthy fats, like stop demonizing butter. Even things like organ meats, apparently we want to see put back into some of the hot dogs.
I haven't been able to get my kids to eat organ. I can't even hardly do organ meats yet.
we can probably hide it in hot dogs a little bit. I don't know. We'll see. But I know that I grew up when my dad did prepare dinner for us, which, he was limited to his abilities, but he would make things like liver and onions, because that was maybe something that he grew up eating.
My
And
parents grew up eating that too. And they tried to force that on me as a kid. And I think that's probably why I haven't.
I liked it.
Why I haven't tried it again.
My sister didn't like it.
Yeah.
Or I don't know if my brother did, but I loved it, and I still love it.
I do it in pills now. I do it like in pill form.
Liver pills?
So they have like, I do this bison trifecta pill that has a lot of the organ. It's like dried organ meats, like in the capsules, and I can at least get it somewhat that way. But when you started this, how do the other parents react when you started like raising hell about this?
Not good. Not good. I felt like it was an unspoken thing, like I was too much of a troublemaker and potentially a conspiracy theorist. And, people have been so indoctrinated by our huge medical industrial complex where just simple things you're no longer allowed to question because you get put into this system. And if you start thinking for yourself, you might be dangerous.
What was their issue though? What did they have an issue with?
I don't think there was an actual issue, but it could be just feeling like they don't want to do something that would make them unliked by other people if they thought different or did anything bold and different. It's I think a people pleasing, and maybe, yeah.
Wow. Well, I that is amazing to me, because if I had somebody advocating keeping an eye out on my children, I would hope my children made healthy choices, but actually keeping an eye out and saying, you know what, you don't need to eat the 2 bags of chips and the ice cream.
I'd be
very thankful for that.
Any of those mothers who are working there, if my daughter goes through that line and her lunch is 2 bags of Doritos and an ice cream, I would want them to say, girl, get some protein.
Wow. Well, how much have you really dug into how the lunch decisions are made at the school level?
I'm not an expert. I'm not an expert. I know that the people who run our cafeteria now have done a phenomenal job of getting food on a plate. And, again, my school, I think, is pretty special, but I know that they've been there a really, really long time. So they know how the system works. And I don't know, how the decisions are made. We have our menu is awesome. One thing about that I think can be broadly implemented, and this will just help with the education and making sure that this radical transparency of what's on our plates, is that posting your menus online with the nutrition and all the ingredients. That was a change that was recently done.
Yeah. But who's making the decision to even put Doritos and ice cream in the line? Why can't that be a start? Why can't that be something that
I think that's
you just say, we're spending a lot of money on these healthy food options. And if we give a kid a choice, they're naturally going to gravitate towards the unhealthy options. Why is it still an option?
I'm not too sure why it's still an option, and I don't really know. I think it's the directors of the school lunch program, but I have to imagine that we want to get to a place where each school has a nutritionist on site and even curates menus that can be broadly implemented, so you can take the guesswork out of the whole thing. And hopefully that's where we're going to go to, and then removing those options.
Is the mentality, though, if we remove the Doritos and ice cream, our kids just won't choose the other food and then they will starve?
I think so.
Interesting.
I think underneath it, they need a chip, right? Like, no meal is complete. No lunch is complete without chips.
Or a treat. Yeah, we got a bad
treat.
habit over spring break getting treats after every meal. And I was like, this is not normal. We do not eat this every, and now that we're back from spring break, they're, Mommy, where's our treat? And I'm like, well, it's a treat for a reason.
Right.
We don't do dessert after every meal.
Right.
in real life here. So, well, now that you're on the Maha movement board, what's the wildest goal that you're pushing for?
I think the wildest goal, for my part in the Maha movement, in addition to the school lunch, is to really start talking to people and freeing them from what our parents have grown up on and have taught us along the way. So, my dad, for instance, is 78 years old. He just started dialysis 2 weeks ago. They've renovated my room to be the treatment center. My mom is retired and she's a nurse and is now just full time, kind of dedicated to my dad. And my dad is a product of this medical industrial complex where you go in when you're, 20 or 30 and you have high blood pressure or high cholesterol and you don't know why. And you can't ask the doctors, like, why do I have high blood pressure? Why do I have high cholesterol? Which, by the way, the standards of high cholesterol has gone down.
Mm-hmm.
You know, every decade it seems to be lower and lower just to kind of get yourself on a statin or a Lipitor or any of those medications. And then after years and years and years of being on that assembly line of, not because doctors intentionally do this, that I don't think they're insidious. I think that they want to help my dad, but they only know one way.
Yeah.
And what that has now resulted in is failed, literally kidney failure. So my part in this is to really start advocating for your body. You should know what's going on with your body. You should know what vitamins you're deficient in. You should know where you are on that metabolic spectrum, because we all have these signals that are that can show up in your blood work or your urine analysis or your saliva or all these things where you can, like a car, when your car is a dashboard and it's got a lot of flashing lights, and sometimes you have a flashing light and you got to check that manual because you don't know what that flashing light means. We have those same signals. And how can we understand those signals and take real advocacy over our body to find out exactly what is going on with our body? And then you make decisions. You say, oh, I have low vitamin D. I have low vitamin A. Oh, my, XYZ biomarker is not optimized. What is optimized? We have never had more access to information with everything that we have online. We don't necessarily need to go immediately to your general practitioner and say, what do you suggest? What, and then you go through the same exact thing that everyone else on the planet does. You should know what's going on in your body and then start targeting those things. Oh, maybe I need to start eating more iron. How do I get more iron? And just start asking good questions.
Yeah. What do you think is the biggest lie that we've been told about what's healthy in our kids' school lunches?
There's a lot of overly processed, so it stays on the shelf for an indefinite amount of time that maybe you just reheat and things like that. So there's a lot of over processed chemicals and additives that extend the shelf life, but it's not actual food. I mean, look at, I wrote a Substack article last week about this, and I think the insight was somewhat lost, but I'm a new writer. But basically, you look at pet food and the pet food industry. And I always had this question, and anytime, this is a perfect example of just how fossilized our mindsets have become in trusting this system. So dogs eat, kibble and bits, and they eat, the stuff that's in the package that can literally, it's not even food by the time these dogs are eating it. And from 1970 until today, the average life of a Labrador went from 17 to 12. So that's a 30%
Wow.
mortality rate for dogs. And what I believe is happening is that with the same over processed foods that we've given our dogs, and we've seen the dog's now dying at 12. They're putting them out, at 12 years old because they can't do it. And I think that the medical system has just kind of they're barely keeping us alive. So you get on that assembly line of, high cholesterol, blood pressure medication. Now your kidneys are failing, and that medical system is treating you. It's not curing you, and it's sustaining you. Otherwise, they would have just put us down.
Does your daughter ever ask you does she get mad that you're always packing her lunch?
She hates it.
Okay, so when you explain to her that the school lunches aren't safe, what kind of pushback does she give you?
She gives me a lot of pushback, more so when she goes to her friends' houses and her friends have pantries full of stuff. I mean, she'll go in there and she will rob you blind, because it's like a child that's never had access before. And she's always like, we have no food.
I can relate with that. I mean, we didn't have a lot of money growing up. So my parents actually never had snacks in the house ever. So when I finally got to a friend's house that had snacks, it was like the Doritos, it was the Pringles, it was the Cokes, because we just never had Cokes in the house. And I remember one friend in particular, her mom just kept 3 pantries full of Oreos and just like every snack you could possibly want. And I would just go gorge myself.
Did you see the video about someone had Oreos? It was on Instagram, I think, and they had it under a flame for 30 seconds.
I don't want to watch that. I don't want to know what's in my body.
Yeah. Literally, it didn't burn. Nothing happened to it.
I know. Well, I'm finding that balance between letting them try it versus explaining or depriving them so they don't go overeat at somebody else's. It's hard. It's hard being a parent.
And
like it is.
I'm not an expert.
Yeah.
I don't claim to be an expert. I just I'm aware now. I'm awakened and more conscious of just real whole foods and getting back to the things that my grandparents had.
Yeah. Well, being in finance, you've seen the money world. So what is the sketchiest money trail that you have found when it comes to the food that's in our school systems?
Well, there's a lot of subsidies by the milk industry. And I think the demonization of raw milk, I think, is very real. We can't even get raw milk. Have you found a place to get raw milk?
You have to get, from local farmers, but not, the stores can't. The stores are not allowed to sell it. It has to be, I forget the level, because I'm just new in this whole raw milk world, but there's a certain level of pasteurization that it has to be to even be allowed into
the grocery store.
So, you have to get it from a local farmer.
I mean, the chocolate milk, why is everyone grabbing the chocolate milk and the sugary drinks? And
milk already has a lot of sugar. Yeah.
It's heavily subsidized. So I'm pretty sure that those contracts will end. And I would love to get to a place where we're more supporting, the local businesses and local communities. Why can't we, this is a big dream. Why can't each school kind of have a partner bakery that bakes fresh sourdough bread? Why can't we, do the farmers market? I know that it's not easy, but I don't think that means that it's not a solvable problem.
Yeah. Well, you're an entrepreneur. So any crazy business ideas sparked from this lunch fight for you?
So I would say so. I think that, just with my personal story with my dad and watching. And by the way, my dad is a microbiologist, so he was in the lab his whole career. My mother is a nurse. They worked in the hospital systems. And watching them go through this journey together, and the inability to be able to really question. I mean, I remember I really started to wake up during when I had Noelle, like literally in the labor and delivery room, how doctors you couldn't question like, oh, well, how much Pitocin do you want to give me? How much of an epidural am I supposed to have? I was a bit incapacitated. So, my husband was really advocating for me, but it became so awkward in that moment of just asking just regular, simple questions to the person who was delivering my daughter that we had to wait until their shift changed, basically. So now I think we're focused on Excel Labs, which is a direct to consumer lab testing business. So a lot of people don't know that you don't have to go to the doctor to
Yeah.
go through your annual physical process where they, have a prescribed amount of tests that they're going to run because that's what the insurance covers.
Yeah.
And that you can actually take advocacy and, customize your own panels and be able to test for the essential things and all the biomarkers. You're seeing a couple of companies kind of doing the same thing. Giving people the freedom to know what their biomarkers are, the results, having them track over time so you know what lifestyle changes you can make that actually work on on your body, and advocating for there's states like New York, New Jersey, and Rhode Island, you're not allowed to do your own lab tests. Full stop. If you are a resident, you can't even come to Texas to get your own lab work done. You're not allowed. There's rules prohibiting that because you're not responsible enough. Obviously, you're not mature enough to know what's going on with your cells.
Mm-hmm. That's crazy.
Isn't it?
What do you think is the number one issue or thing that you would like to see happen from the Maha movement?
I would like to see more freedom of speech. I would like to see more transparency. I want the veil to be lifted off of the mothers, especially because mothers right now, they're barely, I have one child, okay? Multiply that by 4. They're barely holding on, trying to just feed these children, and just getting people to start recognizing that I'm a free human being. I can question things. Like, I might not have a lot of answers, but I have a lot of questions. And there's an internet there that has all the information that the doctors have access to.
Yeah, if it's not suppressed, if it's not silenced, if it's not removed from big tech platforms. So let's say you get this accomplished. What is the first meal that you're serving up to celebrate, and who's invited?
Wow. What is the first meal? First of all, I've been a huge steak fan lately. So it's something that I still actually, the last time I tried to cook steak, the fire department had to come because it got a little too smoky. But I would definitely do, steak, medium rare, seared on the top with butter.
Perfect Texan.
And veggies and olive oil and just that eating the stuff that really just makes you feel satiated. And who would I invite? I would invite a lot of women. I'll tell you that much. I would invite a lot of women. Tiffany, who's our good friend. I would invite Tiffany. Mothers that I'm close with. I long for, a place to entertain and really serve up nutritious meals that won't make you feel like garbage after it, that around the right energy, that lifts you up and doesn't, you ever hang out with just the people that the vibes are just not totally, you can't be yourself.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. Well, as we wrap it up here, I've just got some rapid fire questions that I'm going to throw at you. So just first thing that comes to your mind, quick, what's the worst lunch item ever?
A Lunchable. Do you have the Yuka app?
I do not have the Yuka app.
So Yuka, Yuka.
Okay.
It's an app on your phone and you can scan deodorants and food labels.
Oh, okay. So it's like I use Think Dirty. So okay.
Probably
I don't know if they have food on there. They probably do at this point. So
and a Lunchable, so they score everything out of 100.
Yeah.
A Lunchable is literally a 0.
Yeah.
A 0 out of 100.
I try to tell my husband that because he does get those occasionally from my kids. I'm like, no.
Oh, and the other thing that the kids love at the cafeteria when they're not into the fresh stuff is Uncrustables. Those peanut butter and jelly.
Yeah. And you're saying those are bad.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, they're loaded with calories, and it's like it's not just that it's calories. Calories are fine, but it's
empty calories.
Empty.
Yeah. All right. What's your favorite healthy swap?
Well, I think my favorite healthy swap might be ditching the coffee creamer and just using half and half.
Yep.
No sugar. I've gotten used to coffee either black or just with half and half, and I find that to be really good.
Yeah. Well, and I kind of touched on this earlier, but if there's a different way that, that something else that you've thought of, what's your dream Maha win?
My dream Maha win is for people to start thinking for themselves and for them to be comfortable asking questions and not going with what they've necessarily been taught and what might be popular that day. And for moms to really feel the freedom in advocating for ourselves and our kids. I think each of us, every plate that you have, I'm not an expert, and I am not a health nut 24/7, but do I make choices? Each choice is a choice, and the more I make a better decision with each choice, like that just compounds over time.
Well, I love it. So Jessica, where can people go and follow along with this advisory board, like the movement that y'all are starting, any legislation, like where can they go to find all this information?
So Maha Action is at the center of it all.
Is that a website?
It's a website, but follow them on Instagram. I think that's probably
at Maha Action.
Maha Action. Where else?
And if people want to get involved, is this something that they can also volunteer to sign up for?
I think Maha Action actually does have an opportunity to volunteer, but I think the first way to just be active in it is to just use your voice and just start talking to the people around your table in your community and not being demonized. We don't have to be demonized anymore. The science is really on our side, and history. And each of us has, I think, a responsibility. We all want to be good moms. We all want to do the right thing for our children. And it starts with us.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to come and to tell us about what Maha Action is doing and what you as a mom who doesn't have areas of expertise in all of this can still get involved in, because I think all of us want to know what small actionable steps we can take. I know I myself, as I'm getting into this movement as well, want to do. So thank you so much for your time.
Amy.
And ladies and gentlemen, Jessica is proving that you don't have to have a cape to be a superhero, just a lunch tray and a mission. Full episode has got all the juicy details, so check it out on Play TV.